Hi, I'm Charlie Collins, and we're talking sport. And you're welcome to Talking Sport. Joining me in studio today, Chris McNulty, Damien Dowds and Alan Foley of the Donegal News, the Inishowen Independent and the Donegal Democrat, Donegal People's Press, three eminent sports journalists. Plenty to talk about, particularly in the world of GAA. And we're going to start with that sport. And the last time Damien Dowds was here with me, we were talking about colleges football at the beginning of the season, and very interested in how College Inishowen may do with the move up to senior. Gary McDade was with me that day as well, Damien, and we talked about the possibility of both of them going very well in the McLaren Cup. Well, I suppose from St Eunan's point of view, it couldn't have went any better. From College Inishowen's defeat in the final, but still, as you hope for, tremendous progress.
Absolutely, you know, that's the first year for Inishowen to be competing at that senior level in colleges football. They had been involved for about 3 years prior to that at underage, at under 14, under 16 and so on. And it was a bit of a step into the void as far as we were concerned. We didn't know what was ahead of us. We had heard so much over the years about McLaren Macrorie Cup. To be involved in it was great. They topped their group. They won their 3 matches in the group. Tight battles, particularly against Katy and against Kilkeel in that. And then in the quarterfinals and the semi-finals, Downpatrick and Carrickmacross, again 2 very, very tight games, and the final was no different as well. 170, 1-5, pretty low scoring. Both teams would have known one another very well, and both teams, the defence of both teams did particularly well to nullify substantial attacking threats from the other side. And you know, St Eunan's got a late penalty that Inishowen probably didn't get time to respond to. It came in about the 59th minute or something, so great excitement for St Eunan's to win that. And you know, for Inishowen, you have to say, for our debut season in the tournament, like, we're very, very pleased to get as far as that.
I mean, it's always disappointing to lose a final, and particularly for young lads to lose a final, having worked so hard to get there. But I mean, the main thing, Damien, and you've alluded to it, is the progress. Tremendous this year, and I suppose fair to say maybe beyond expectations.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, I know when I spoke to Sean Noonan at the start of the season, I was saying, like, you know, hopefully we get out of the group. Now, he was of a view that they should be going out to win it, like, you know, that's a bit ambitious, because, you know, we've been playing in the A divisions at the younger age groups, at under 16 and under 14, and we'd really struggled to even get out of the groups in those. But he got a great response from the players. Virtually, one of the difficulties you have, I suppose, in an area like Inishowen, where you've got 4 or 5 schools feeding into it, is ensuring that you get your entire squad out, all the players that you want out. And Sean Noonan, Sean Clerk and Robert Farr and the others that were involved there, they managed to get their entire squad out. Occasionally be missing players through injury or through other commitments, but they got the full squad out. They trained very, very well, and they got a great run to the final. Like, and on the day they can have no real complaints. Like, St Eunan's took their goal very well when they won it. They probably shaded things in terms of possession, but very, very pleased. And what it has given is it has given the players over the winter months an incredible level of football, that the club competition is finished at that stage. There's nothing else going on, and they had that, and that'll really stand to them. Like, you know, when a number of the Inishowen players are in the county minor squad. There's 2 of them actually, Kevin McLaughlin and Darragh O'Connor, who are in the under 21 squad. Both missed out last night due to injury, but you know, Inishowen traditionally would have had 1, maybe 2 players on county minor panels going back over the last 20-25 years. You know, we've got 4 on the panel this year. We had 4 on last year, so I think you're starting to see that they're making that bit of progress at intercounty level, which is good for the Inishowen players themselves. It's good for the Inishowen clubs, but it's good for the county as well, because a quarter of the population of the county lives in Inishowen, like, and if it is not pulling its weight or punching its own weight, you know, it holds Donegal back. So, you know, hopefully they can make an impression now this year, both with their clubs and the boys that are in the county teams can as well.
Fantastic. Chris, great to see 2 Donegal schools, and we've talked about this in the past. I know I'm talking to Martin McHugh regularly. He reckons Donegal won't have a long-term future at the top unless you build from the bottom, type of thing. It was a neglected area, but to get 2 schools into a final, and we're going to talk about the minors and under 21 shortly, progress certainly.
Yeah, absolutely, and Damien alluded to it there. What it does, it gives these players competitive games, real competitive games at provincial level, and it means they're not coming into the likes of the minor championship or the minor league blind as to what they can expect, because a lot of their opponents, a lot of the opposition are much the same. You know, you look at the schools in the north, like a lot of counties maybe have only 1 or 2 schools at secondary level. I suppose we're a bit unfortunate geographically in Donegal that we have so many, but to get schools competing in Ulster finals, I mean, huge crowd in Armagh on Sunday, that's got to benefit those players. I mean, a lot of them will be involved on May 25th in Celtic Park.
Yeah.
They won't be sort of phased now. They know what playing in front of a big crowd is like, and if it's only to do that, to prepare their minds and to prepare them for walking into a big arena, then surely it has to be a benefit. You know, I was talking to Declan Bono, the minor manager, during the week, and like he was alluding to Donegal's success across the school spectre this year, and like it gives him great encouragement going forward that a lot of his players are having success, because you know they're coming into his panel now.
Success,
exactly, they're coming in now on a winning note,
yeah,
and they know what winning's like, and they're in the winning habit. And I suppose if all these schools now can marry themselves together at minor level, then you know Donegal football will benefit in the long term.
Absolutely. And I suppose for St Eunan's, Alan, you know, we better mention 5th McLaren Cup, and a lot of hard work going in up there as well, because it's not that easy to have that success at that type of level.
No, it's something they really cherish up in St Eunan's, Charlie. When you go in the front door, the first thing you see is the framed pictures on the wall. They won it in '68, I suppose. Like if you look at the 7-9 team, the likes of Paul Carr and Charlie McGrew came from that team. Yeah. 2000 was a springboard for the likes of Colin McFadden, Neil Gallagher, Rory Kavanagh, and then the most recent one before this year was 2007. Michael Murphy was part of that team, and then you have people like Anton McFadden and Peter Devine who have gone on, you know, to represent Donegal at different levels. And Peter has won senior county championships, so it is something they stock very highly up there. And I suppose Chris mentioned there, you know, the difference been here in the north. I suppose the one problem I suppose St Eunan's have is they've such a vibrant soccer scene there as well.
Yeah.
Like on Tuesday morning, some of them lads were back down in Dundalk playing in All-Ireland semi-final. They got beat 1-0 by Ballsbridge, so they're doing very well to compete at the level they are. But I think it's a really interesting set up this year now with the Marquee Cup victors Carrick Vocational School, because we didn't really know how to judge Carrick and St Eunan's, so on Saturday it's a real novel pairing and something I think we're looking forward to.
Absolutely. It's a good idea by the school's authorities really to take this step on, not to leave it there. Great opportunity, 2 more Donegal schools in virtually an All-Ireland quarter-final with an All-Ireland title at stake as well a bit further down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been brilliant for the Donegal schools. The PCC Falcarra of course won the Arthur's Cup. They have an All-Ireland semi-final this weekend. You had St Eunan's and College Jenna's showing, and the thing about that, there's 5 schools there, so there's young guys in first year who have a 5th year student, you know, that are playing in the McLaren final. That'll inspire all the different schools there. So with College and Carriga coming into that now as well, it's been like a kind of a new element to football in the county, and one of course that will definitely please the likes of Declan Broner, the minor manager.
Absolutely. Well done to all the schools involved, and good luck to St Eunan's and Carrick. Quick run around here. Who's likely to win that? Will St Eunan's be too strong? We hear from the one and through, Asha, we only have 100 boys or something at the school, and I don't need to tell you who keeps telling me that, but Chris, St Eunan's to win it?
I think St Eunan's will win it, but I suppose what Colashton and Carriga have over the years, you know, they've great sort of heart and great hunger and great desire and all of that, and that probably will make it maybe a closer game than some of us might expect. But I think over the year St Eunan's probably will prove too strong. I mean, we've got to remember as well, Colashton and Carriga are very limited in numbers, and they're missing one of the best young minor players in the county at the moment, in Stephen McBurdy. Now, where's Stephen McBurdy there? Maybe it would tilt the scales in their favour, but I think without him, St Eunan's will have too much.
Damien?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I think there's about half a dozen clubs that are represented in the St Eunan's college team, you know, as compared to the 2 from Colashton and Carrigan. And like I know there's a real nearly like a kind of a club feel, even though it's Kilcar and Eve Clummer that wouldn't always be the best of bodies like what they do. And they've done very, very well in the clubs and whatever bought into. So they probably stand to have that kind of you know, that kind of rural club mentality against the bigger team, like, you know, which is often, you know, sometimes work in their favour. But you'd have to say St Eunan's College, they've got a lot of different options, like even some of the substitutes they're bringing on, like, you know, pretty strong panel, and it's hard to see that they won't advance to the semi-final.
I'll agree.
I'm going to have to agree, Charlie. I think the St Eunan's team is very balanced. Like I've been watching the St Eunan's College teams in the McLaren Cups for the guts of 20 years. Even the 2000 team was very reliant on Colin McFadden, the 2007 on Michael Murphy. This team, in the nicest way possible, is no real stars, but they're just a very good balanced team throughout. So and you can see with Neil Gordon's won 3 now McLaren Cups. Gary McDade, of course, is taking Glen Swilly to an Ulster final. You can see his fingerprints nearly on that game, the last game. I think in the last minute when Eunan's got ahead, they knew how to hold it, they knew how to defend it, and they played it quite intelligently. So
all right, we'll just briefly touch. I was at the minor game on Tuesday night in the under-21s. With all due respect for Mana, didn't provide very strong opposition on either occasion. The minors won in very comfortably, and it's a good start for Declan in the league, so we won't dwell too much on it. Chris, the under-21s last night, we were there. Alan was there as well. Again, the night was in it, was a tough one for Mana with a strong breeze. Looked okay in the first 20 minutes, but once Donegal got those 2 goals, it was over as a contest. I know he was missing a couple of players, but there's high hopes for Maxie's under-21 team this year.
Yeah, there are high hopes, and like a lot of people coming out last night were sort of saying it was a disappointing performance, and there's a lot of things, but I think we might give them the benefit of the doubt on last night. I mean, it was an absolutely horrific night in Ballbofey, Charlie, and they were coming in under an awful lot of pressure because every one of us, I think, had written Fermanagh off as pretty much no hopers. And to put that pressure on young fellas, I think, the mindset can change them. When they looked at Darragh O'Connor was injured, is one of their more potent threats in front of goal, and they lose the goalkeeper in the warm-up, and disruptions like that doesn't help the best of teams, never mind a group of young fellas. But look, they got through it with some excellent performances. Patrick McBurdy hitting 1-7. Some of his points were outrageous, and really at this level Patrick McBurdy is one of the best in the country. He consistently does deliver at under 21
level. He's a huge threat, isn't he?
He's massive, and I think it was probably no surprise last night that the three better players on show were Patrick. Ryan McHugh was absolutely immense at centre half back, and Martin O'Reilly again an industrious shift. Three players that will be crucial, and if they can get Darragh O'Connor back, you can see why there are high hopes for this team. Yeah,
and they go on to play Armagh or Antrim, and they had a massive draw, you may say. Antrim looked dead a couple of times in that game, so there is an opportunity, Alan, to get to an Ulster final there now.
Absolutely, and I think with Maxie and Rory Gallagher, you're going to have a really well prepared team. Last year I think Donegal maybe caught Tyrone on the hop in the first game. They were so well prepared. They got past Derry and got to an Ulster final against Cavan. I wouldn't want to stick my neck out too far at this early stage, but Cavan are already looking pretty ominous. They had 2 good wins in the competition already. Very comprehensive win over Tyrone last night after winning in Celtic Park against Derry. But at least Maxie and Rory now can go to the replay next week, have a good look at Antrim, have a good look at Armagh, and see which way they're going to approach that. But I think I would be quite positive about it.
Yeah, Damien, we mentioned Darragh O'Connor's out, of course. If we got him and Paddy McBurdy in sync, I mean, forwards won matches, and the way modern football's set up now, you can be very defensive. We've seen that. We saw it in Newry on Sunday, where it was 1-9 to 10 points. It was a terrible game to watch, actually, But if you've clasped forwards like that, they're very, very hard to contain.
Absolutely, a bit of a little and large act there. O'Connor does give something different. He's so small, low to the ground, very, very quick. As long as he can just get himself cleared up from some of these, he's been having a kind of persistent hamstring injury since maybe last year. So as long as he can get over that in time for the next round or for later rounds of this. But yeah, he offers a great goal scoring threat, and McBurdy, is a man amongst boys really at this level. So augurs well for Donegal. But with Alan, I think the word in Cavan is that they believe this to be their best under-21 team, and I think they're going for 3 under-21 Ulster titles in a row. They really have been the standard bearers at under-21 level for the last couple of years. But luckily we're on the different side of the draw to them.
That's right.
So
you get to an Ulster final, anything can happen. That's for sure. Now, we mentioned Donegal there. Let's just go back now, because great start to the league with 3 victories, 2 very impressive ones away from home, then beating Monaghan. I think coming out of the Donald Park, everybody thought that's it, done and dusted now. The league's basically won, because Meath were visiting the following week and they hadn't been too impressive up to that. And then we were going down to Down, which, they hadn't been going too well. And then Louth was going to come, so I think it was a foregone conclusion. But back to reality, Chris, with a draw and a defeat, and certainly the edge would appear to have gone off the team in the last 2 matches.
Yeah, I think the worry is we've gone back to reality with quite a bit of a bang in the last couple of weeks, because I think we were probably guilty of getting ahead of ourselves. We were counting the points that we hadn't got in the bag, but in a league with just 7 games, the margins are always going to be so tight, and there's nobody going to really run away with it. And there were worrying signs against Meath, and we sort of thought, right, okay, we'll sort these out for next week. But I think, if anything, those worrying signs were maybe magnified on Sunday. You look at stuff like the kick-outs against Meath, probably I think we had a worse ratio of winning kick-outs, or conversion rate. We had 20 shots that were missed. We were very un-Donegal-like on Sunday. We just weren't clinical. I mean, the accuracy was just, from what you would call simple stuff, was just left a lot to be desired for, and a lot of worrying signs, in terms of different positions and that, and worrying signs as well when you look at the fact that over 5 league games we've only had 16 men starting games, and for all the talk of rotating a squad, for all the talk of our squad has got bigger now. Granted, we do have, Darragh O'Connor's in there, Christy Tow's come in, Oran McNeilis has come in, but that said, we still only had 16 men starting.
Yeah.
Of the 10 guys that we've used as subs, 3 of those have really only made I suppose what you'd call cameo appearances at the end of games. A lot of that is very worrying going forward.
And Alan, I think we were talking about before we started recording here. The way Down played against Donegal, they did that in Breffni Park last year as well, and we don't seem to be able to cope with that.
No, there's definitely, looking at Down from the 2012 Ulster final, you could see that taking it on a step. They've taken some of the niceness out of the team, but they're more an Ulster team under McCartan. You could see that last year, and now it's got another step this year. We kind of struggled a little bit against Meath, who were kind of defensively set up as well, and once Down got their noses in front, they weren't really for coming out at all, and we struggled to beat them down, which I suppose it was pretty disappointing, especially with all the missed chances there. But I think Michael Murphy made an interesting point afterwards. He says at this time of the year teams are at different stages, so sometimes you don't read too much into results, because maybe when Donegal went to Portlaoise they were much fitter at the time than Laois with the new manager. So I know there's a lot of heavy training going on, but there are slight signs for concerns there at the minute. I'd definitely say that, Charlie.
Damien, just looking at where we're at now, that defeat last Sunday's put Donegal slightly back in the pack. There's 3 teams with 7 points, there's a couple of teams with 5 points, and there's only 2 series of matches to go. Let's say, again dangerously, beating Louth is a given to move us on to 9 points. The last game's against Armagh, but depending on how Monaghan do, they have 2 home games, they look pretty home and dry. Meath have 2 away games, which will be difficult, and Down have 2 away games, which will be difficult. Meath have a couple of difficult games left as well. One victory might be enough, but it might not, and it would be a bit of a disaster now after the start not to get promotion.
Absolutely. I suppose the one thing to say about it is within our own hands. Like, win or 2 games and we'll go up, but and I think that's a very important objective for Donegal. We must be getting promotion from here. And I know there's a lot of, some of Jim's words last year, he said maybe misconstrued, and he says the league didn't matter. When you're defending All-Ireland champions, you just wanted to maintain your position in Division 1.
Yeah.
But when you're just the All-Ireland champions from just 18 months ago, you're playing in Division 2 against what clearly are second tier teams. You really got to be getting your way out of it. So it's hugely important that we now take and beat Louth. And Armagh away, Armagh have been very, very, very hot and cold, but we've struggled against them over the years as well. So there's going to be nothing easy about it. But look, we have stuck pretty much with our very strongest 15, and they're going to have to find something from somewhere. The form of some of the players, or scoring from open play and so on, some of their defensive thing isn't really working out at the moment, and they don't have an awful long time now to fix it out. I think there's a round of the All-County League this weekend, so I'm sure there hasn't been a heavy amount of training for the county side this week. So yeah, all to do after being in such a strong position after the opening 3 games.
Yeah, because the problem would be, Chris, Armagh go to Galway the next day, and that's has the hallmarks of a relegation battle, because Galway definitely need to win that, and if Armagh lose, we go to Armagh then the following week, and Armagh are going to have to win maybe to avoid relegation. So tough games coming up.
I think maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I think the one thing that might stand us is that we're playing Louth on Sunday week, and no disrespect to Louth, but as Damien said, we're the All-Ireland champions of 18 months ago. We really ought to, on home soil, be not just beating teams like Louth, but beating them convincingly well. Now that may sound disrespectful to Louth, but that's the reality of the situation. Yeah. We consider ourselves to be a top tier team, so we need to be showing ourselves to be a top tier team on home soil after 2 pretty poor performances. Now I know Jim's work with the team over the next couple of weeks will be limited because of All-County League and that, but we really do need to be coming on Sunday week, because a win on Sunday pretty much would guarantee, to know the mathematics of it aren't as clear cut as that, but a win, and a convincing win on Sunday week to boost that score difference as well. You really don't want to be going to Armagh with that phrase of needing to win or having to win. You'd really want it done and dusted before then. Yeah,
because the bigger picture, Alan, is that the Derry game in the Championship is the one that really the focus is on. Now, last year, everybody said there was too much focus on the Tyrone game. There's not as much talk about the Derry situation. And better still, Derry are going very, very well in Division 1, so there's a lot of talk about them. And knowing Brian McIver as we do, he wouldn't really want that. He want to be playing it down, but whether they like it or not, Derry are favourites to maybe won Division 1 at this stage, the way they're playing, or certainly win the shake-up and definitely get to a semi-final.
Yeah, I was in watching the game against Tyrone the first night. They came from 7 down and they've continued that good form. They've picked up as many points in Division 1 as we have in Division 2, and even their loss was down in Cork, a narrow 1 point loss after they were really all at sea at one stage. They managed to come back, so that's an absolutely huge game. But I don't think it's any major deal if we have to go to Armagh and produce something. I think it's better to go and have to fight for something than instead of going up they're already promoted in a league final, which happened to us in Portlaoise a few years ago. So I think it's no harm going up there and maybe keeping the competitive edge on it. So, but I suppose all the talk is about the 25th of May this year after the 26th of May last year. Sorry, but we'll get a chance to look at Derry too, because they'll be in a league semi-final at the bare minimum, you would think. Yeah, and I was quite impressed with them that night. The one thing I would say, they play quite an open brand of football, which Donegal teams tend to do better against. As we just said a few minutes ago, we struggled against the kind of Meath a couple of weeks ago, and then in Uri on Sunday. So it's really boiling up that game. Like, it's really going to have a good championship feel about it, because it's certainly no walkover. No.
I'll throw another spanner in the works here, Damien. Do we really want to play Monaghan in a league final?
Well, I mean, probably. I mean, you know, Jim's spoken about how he wants to win every game, and you know, I'd say winning the Division 2 final. Once you get to Croke Park, if you get to a league final in Croke Park, you absolutely do want to do it. We want to be testing ourselves against Monaghan again. Like, you know, we did, you know, beat a Monaghan team that probably wasn't at full strength in Letterkenny, and we'd like a shot at them again in Croke Park, no doubt. Like, you know, but the Derry one is the big one, obviously, and you know, the better they do in the league now, the better it is for Donegal, as far as I'm concerned. Like, they have been showing their hand very, very well. Like, and I was just thinking there'll be some team wants to get Owen Bradley back.
Absolutely. So in summary, Chris, we'll say that it'll be very disappointing after the start, 7 points out of 8, if Donegal didn't get promotion. That would be seen as a disappointment. Yeah, well, I think it's fair to say, Charlie, with 2 games to go, promotion is an absolute must for Donegal, because going forward we need to be playing top tier football. You know, we need to be playing against the Dublins, the Kerrys, the Corks, as we keep saying. We do need to be playing on the top tier. We need to get out of Division 2, and I think going forward, if we're to get a league final later this season, in between league and the Derry game, the likes of those boys, like I mentioned about the college boys earlier, if you're getting the likes of Oran McNeilis, Darragh O'Connor and these boys, game time in a big game in a final against Monaghan, the defending Ulster champions at Croke Park, that can only be a good thing to prepare them for going into Celtic Park, which is going to be no easy task on May 25th. Absolutely not. We'll move on to soccer, and we'll start, Alan, with Harps. I had Ollie in here a few weeks ago, and typical of Ollie, he wasn't making any outrageous predictions. He was sort of very sensible about the whole situation and how tough it was going to be. 4 points out of a possible 6, a draw at home and a 1 away. I'm sure he would have taken that, whatever way it came, 4 points out of 6. And they've got 2 home games coming up now against Cove and Galway, neither of whom have started in brilliant form. I think they only have a point each after a draw and a defeat. So let's not get carried away here, but a steady start.
Definitely. I said something similar to Ollie the last night, and he was keeping very grounded, Charlie. It was a good result last week, considering they only won 1 home game away last year over the whole course of the season in the league. They beat Longford Town 3-2 in May, so they've already matched that after 1 game. And I spoke to Michael Funson in the week. He said it shaved a few miles off the journey home. You know, good form getting back in the bus. Shamrock Rovers B are a really tough team to judge yourselves against, because Shamrock Rovers first team had a game on at the weekend beforehand, and they had the Stanley Cup fixture. So the team that Harps played was a very young team, quite good technically, all I said, but they kind of bullied them into the victory really without playing particularly well. So that's why Ollie is still a bit cautious. The Waterford game, might be the best way to judge them so far. And of course, like, they're looking at a game or 2 without Sean McCarron, Kevin McHugh and possibly Kieran Call. They're 3 of their better players, like 3 of their probably top players. So Cove on Friday night will be like a real battle, as Cove teams usually are. And as I said, you're missing like your first choice strike force. So I'd say Ollie would be, if another win on Friday, he would be absolutely delighted.
Surprised, Damien, at the start they've had?
Not really. I think one thing that Ollie Horgan's done is he's really has dampened down expectations, which is probably no harm. He was coming in there, very limited budget and so on. He's assembled a team using his local knowledge, like, you know. But no, look, a win on the road against Shamrock Rovers, as Alan says, they knocked out Cockhill out of the EA Cup as well. I know from speaking to some of the Cockhill boys that, you know, they were very impressed with how Harps played that night. Like, the first half hour, they said they were lucky not to be 3, 4, 5 down, like, you know. So they were quite impressed with him that time. So no, look, it's going to be a long haul ahead for them, like, but no, they have the prospect of you know, at least better than last season's performance. Like, and look, the main thing for Finn Harps and I suppose Derry seem to have gone off on a different tangent now altogether with fewer of the local based players, is like focus on that, get the people into the ground and see if they can build from that. Like, it's a long haul ahead though.
Absolutely. Good crowd for the Waterford game, which was encouraging, Chris. It would have been difficult to count heads on that particular night, and given the victory over Shamrock Rovers Rovers in these 2 home games to come. It's an opportunity to keep people at Finn Park, and as we know, that's always important for Harps.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, there was 850 odd there for the Waterford game, and I think to get 400 odd of those back for Cockhill was a massive achievement for Harps, because there were nights last year when the league crowds would have been less than half of
less than 200
that was there for the Cockhill game. You know, so with 2 home games back to back, and 2 games that, you know, looking at the early standings, they should be there or thereabouts. I think maybe 4 points from the next 2 games would be a huge success return for Ollie. But a win this Friday night, and I think, you know, with 800 there against Waterford, you might get a few more out this week. A win this week and another positive night, you could very well break the 1,000 barrier for the Galway game, and that, Charlie, for Finn Harps at the moment would be like winning the lotto. Yeah, you know, because really they just do not have any money at all in Finn Park. It's been well documented, but if they can start getting those crowds and start getting that wee bit of momentum that they had last year, it could be the key to the very survival of the club. Yeah,
and the guys have alluded to it as well. The squad is small. I mean, Ollie said that as well, and it's hard to keep a big squad when you don't have the resources to do that, and we all know now that players, the loyalty factor isn't a huge thing. But he said to me that day he was in that he felt this team there was a good togetherness about them, and there was a common focus about them, and if he can retain that, then he's got a chance.
Yeah, I think the boys are all realistic enough to know the situation at Finn Park, and like last week I think they could only maybe take 5 subs or something to Shamrock Rovers, and you know, they were missing, as Alan said there, 3 of their best players. They're missing the captain, Kevin McHugh, their vice captain, Kieran Call, Sean McCarron, a player that we've seen plenty of flashes of his brilliance over the last couple of seasons. Unfortunate that he's going to be out now for maybe 2 months. Yeah. Kevin's hamstring is a problem, and Kieran Call out with an ongoing issue. And when you've got such a limited squad, to lose 3 players of that calibre, and also he talked about the under-19s, like there's 3 of those that are involved with his Republic of Ireland schools team. Now, they may not have much senior experience, but what they would be is numbers. And like when you're working off the limited numbers that Ollie is, you really need everybody going forward. So I think over the next couple of weeks, got to hope that he keeps his players fit, and I know that's out of his hands, but any more injuries, Charlie, and already could be looking at a numbers crisis.
I suggested to him the day he was in, Damien, that it was a real shock because it was kept under wraps so much that even these guys hadn't a clue up to the last minute, and that's saying something. But I mean, he's a real pragmatist, Ollie. I mean, he says what he thinks and he thinks what he says, and I like that about him. And I mean, as you say, he's dampened down expectations, but you know that's his honest opinion on the thing.
Absolutely, and I think the thing about him as well is, like, obviously he knows everything from the Ulster Senior League level. He's been involved for so long, but he knows a lot about schoolboy level as well. Chris was mentioning the Republic of Ireland schoolboys. Ollie manages that team. He's heavily involved with St Eunan's College, who's Alan's mentioned earlier. I think they're in an Ulster final as well shortly against Scoilwara. It was called off today for some reason, but you know, so he has a very good knowledge of the young players who are going to be, which Harps are going to have to focus on, like, you know, and when you do that, and when a club does that, and you know, we'll talk. Might mention Derry later. They've kind of moved away from that, but you know, once you get that, you bring their families, their friends, or their uncles or cousins, whatever, will come in to see them play at senior level, like, and that's really got to be the future for Finn Harps. And look, Ollie was a surprise appointment, but you know, I think he's done very well in the opening couple of games, and he's going to keep that expectation. I think he says there's no point in us even talking about promotion of the league, and he's going to, you know, keep that going for as long as he can manage. And you know, eventually, if the results on the field start to dictate otherwise, he'll have to reassess. But no, he's done a good job so far and got a good squad in. And look, he knows what he's about, and he knows the players that are in the county as well, from schoolboys and intermediate level at with Ulster Senior League. So yeah, I turned a good appointment, hopefully. Yeah,
let's stay with Derry City then, as you say. Roddy Collins, high profile man, plenty to say, and talks the game up well. Not a great start to the season for them, and a lot of surprise decisions in their pre-season.
Absolutely. I mean, I watched the game down in Shamrock Rovers. Like, I think they were a wee bit unlucky that night. Like, you know, they gave away a goal very late. Like, you know, but yeah, there's a wee bit of disquiet within Derry. Declan Devine, that was there, had focused very much on home-based players, on developing the youth, and you know, I think there's 10 new signings or something in there. You know, he's come in. Roddy Collins, big investment in Derry in contrast to Harps. Like, you know, they've really put their money behind the manager there, and you know, I think there was a very poor crowd at the Brandywell on Sunday, and you know, it's a bad result at home to Cork. Like, and Roddy's out and he's scowling about the pitch and he's scowling about different things, like, you know, but the style of football that he plays isn't the type of passing thing that Derry have been known for the last couple of years. It's kind of a bit of a blunderbuss approach, like, he's under pressure already, 2 games in and just a point out of 6. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. The Derry fans, you know, they liked having their local men there playing for them. They liked having the style of football, and they liked having the local man managing them, like, and Devine. So he's under a wee bit of pressure already, like.
Yeah, the fact that Declan Devine, as Damien said, had done what was considered to be a reasonably good job and played a certain type of fluent football. Roddy can't afford too many more defeats now, Alan.
No, and Declan Devine was looking at the bigger picture, Charlie, as well. The thing with Roddy, I always think he's a bit of a stopgap kind of manager. He's a bit enigmatic. He didn't know what he'd bring. In fairness, in Athlone last year, like, nobody really predicted him to bring them from the Ashes to the Premier Division, but he done that playing a kind of first division attritional brand of football, which really isn't appreciated in Derry. It's a different horse for course approach, I suppose, in Derry, but I don't know, I think it's a bit of a risky appointment from day one, and I suppose we could see the likes of Peter Hutton maybe stepping in the wings, like a very well appreciated man around the Brandywell, but I suppose we'll give Roddy a bit of time to get his feet under the table yet. He's only played the 2 games as yet, but as I said, he always stinks a little bit of short-termism with me.
We might give him a bit of time, but people in Derry mightn't give him too much time, Chris.
Absolutely not, Charlie. I think Roddy was on borrowed time from the day and her that he went into Derry City.
That's true.
And, Derry's like a city like no other, Charlie, when it comes to football. And they
really know their football.
They know their football, but they also they appreciate their local fellas. And you see the likes of Patrick McElhinney, Shane McElhinney and Ryan McBride, in my opinion 3 of the best young players in the League of Ireland. When you see these boys having to battle to get their place in the first team, it doesn't take long for that disquiet to rumble in the Brandywell, and when you've got a guy coming in with 10 new signings to a team that had probably punched above its weight under Declan Devine, if we're being truthful. He took them into Europe last season and was very, very close in terms of challenging for the league until they got derailed after the European exploits. But I honestly believe that if Roddy Collins wins the league title with Derry City with his 10 new signings, that there are a lot of people in Derry who would rather see them finishing a bit lower down the table with an all locally based side, because they really just do appreciate their local football. But
kind of an 0-1 situation.
Difficult for Collins coming in there now, it has to be said, like. But it does say, look, it spoke of a huge investment by the board at Derry City to come in. Like, there's serious money that has been invested in these new players, like. So you'd hope it would pay off for them. They've had their troubles in the past, like, you'd hope it'd pay off for them on this occasion.
Well, we're gonna move on to a sport now that we don't talk too much about on Talking Sport, and that's horse racing. The Cheltenham Festival's just ended, and there was loads to talk about there. And actually, for my column with the Donegal News this week, I actually alluded to it. Tragically, a number of horses died. Thankfully, no jockeys died, but several of them serious injuries. And even before Cheltenham started, young Brian Cooper, who now is number 1 with the Michael O'Leary stable, got a leg break that the chief medical officer described, Damien, as something you'd expect from a motorbike accident. Then we had Ruby Walsh, and we had Darryl Jacob, and we had others as well. And then, unfortunately, later in the week, Martin Harley went down in a flat race, and we believe it's not as bad as first thought, but the dangers of the sport have come out. I mean, the Cheltenham Festival, I felt, was just slightly overshadowed by what happened with the horses and particularly with the jockeys.
I suppose one of the reasons for it always comes to the fore because Cheltenham, it gets the massive media coverage from all corners, so focuses on to like never before. But yeah, the injuries to the jockeys, the deaths to the horses, I suppose, is really in the spotlight. And look, it's the bravery of those men that are getting up on the animals that are that size and are racing a lot, like, it's unbelievable bravery from those. And look, the jockeys themselves will talk about how they know it's a contact sport, so to speak, how dangerous the sport is. But yeah, I don't know what more can be done. I don't know what can be done to save them from it. Like, you've got whatever it is, a couple of tons worth of meat under you, and if you fall even in the flat yesterday, it can happen as well. You can be thrown from your horse, like. But a lot of injuries that occur, and the jockeys are hugely brave men who are doing it. For the most part, most of them aren't particularly well remunerated for it. So they're professionals there. They're we've seen the rugby team, we've seen the soccer players and so on, professionals that are doing what they do there and getting well looked after for it. The jockeys really are some of the bravest sportsmen on the planet.
Absolutely. And it always amazes me, Chris, that the first question I'll ask is when we'll be able to get back into the saddle again. Ruby Walsh is concerned now he's going to miss the Grand National and all that type of stuff. But as Damien said, I know that the racing authorities do their very best in terms of health and safety, and you give them credit for it, but there's not that much they can do. Horses jumping over fences are going to fall, and jockeys are going to come off them, and horses coming behind are going to hit them. But it just seems that maybe with the Cheltenham highlighting it, that the dangers are getting even worse now than they were.
Yeah, funny, I watched that race of Martin Harley's yesterday, Charlie. I would watch a good bit of horse racing, and it actually shocked me how bad the fall was. I mean, he was travelling 45 miles an hour and he came off onto the all-weather track, with horses quite literally running over the top of him. And like, he's got no protection at all in terms of protective clothing. Like, he's got a silks on and a
they
little
want
helmet.
To be as light as possible.
When you come off, Charlie, at 45 miles an hour, that stuff is no good to you, but like, as Damien mentioned, these boys do not get well remunerated for their jobs. They're pretty much in pittance. And they're like, Martin Harley yesterday was to have 7 rides, 5 at Lingfield and another 2 at Kempton Park later in the evening. They're often going, even hear of guys flying from the UK into Ireland for evening meets and stuff like that. What they do and the sacrifices they make for their sport is absolutely, it's unbelievable. Even, the high profile jockeys, John Thomas McNamara, the young guy from Limerick who's been paralysed because of his sport. Brian Cooper, you mentioned Ruby Walsh. I mean, the top jockey of our time, probably, himself and AP McCoy. And I think it was the Irish Independent last week did a graphic outlining the injuries that he's had. It's absolutely remarkable that the guy is still standing on 2 feet. And looking at Martin Harley's yesterday, as I said, was horrific. He's come down neck first, and you're sort of looking, and you do have that concern for 5 or 10 minutes, geez, is this guy going to be okay? And thankfully, we can report that Martin is going to make a full recovery.
You just wonder, just based on what Chris said there, Alan, what's it going to be like in later life for them? Because we hear about football injuries coming back to bother people. I mean, when these guys get into their 50s and 60s, you have to presume that's going to have a serious effect on their well-being.
Yeah, and every sport in the world, Charlie, is getting bigger, faster, stronger, and I can only imagine, like when I heard yesterday Martin broke a bone in his neck, you really puts the fear up you. And I suppose, as Chris mentioned there, I think there's no scarier sight in sport of any type than seeing a jockey coming off with horses coming right up beside him. But as you said, they're not very well paid. That's maybe why their first question is, when are we getting back? When am I getting back? So I suppose we just love to wish Martin all the best, and we're glad to hear, I suppose, it wasn't as bad as we first feared yesterday.
Just want to say well done to the Irish rugby team. We won't go into too much. Sad to see Brian O'Driscoll finish, but he finished on a high note, and I mean, an icon of our time. I suppose we were lucky to have lived in the time that we have, to have seen him and the way he played, and I just, the kind words that were said about him by everyone was tremendous, both on and off the pitch. So well done to him. Going to go back to soccer now, Alan. Manchester United, David Moyes, has he long left?
He's certainly granted himself a stay of execution, and I suppose, like, last night's result, they weren't playing a very good Olympiacos team first and foremost, but I suppose for the people who pay and go there every week, to get a result like that does give them a bit of spring back in their step. There's still major problems. I think there was chances being created left, right and centre by the Greek team, who aren't, although they won their domestic league at the weekend, there's definitely stronger teams than them about, and United will find that out now. There's 7 really big hitters in the hat with them for the quarter-final draw, but I suppose it'll keep them going. And I feel a little bit sorry for Moyes in a way. Like, he has inherited.
You don't really?
I do a little bit, honestly. Because,
this man's a Liverpool fan, by the way, in case people don't know.
I do feel a little sorry, because I do find some of the players don't seem to be given the proper effort for him, and that was very evident now against Liverpool. It was a bit different last night. I suppose there was a bit of atmosphere. They got the result, they got through. So I don't know, really. It could end up being the worst thing that ever happened. God knows on the draw who they're going to get. Charlie's the way they're playing now and conceding that many chances, it could be.
I was joking last night, Damien, up in Balbuffet, that you'll have 7 teams hoping to get Manchester United in the quarter-final draw. Maybe things are not that bad, but it's changed times, because they would have been a team to avoid.
Absolutely. I think the only thing that United are going to get out of the next round is whatever money's available from the TV pot in front of them. But realistically, I mean, that's what it is, and that's probably going to be important to some degree, because they're looking into a period now where they're going to be kind of in the second tier or whatever when it comes to the top of European competitions. And look, Moyes inherited a team that was creaking, and I know Ferguson got every little last drop out of them, and there was an aura around Man United that's been entirely dispelled and shattered. But he's we'll see if he should make it to the summertime. Manchester United would have a thing too, but not sacking their manager and so on, and especially not doing midstream. But I think they have a bit of a way back. They have a long way back, actually.
The smart money says if they lose to Man City next Tuesday night, he's right back under pressure again. Are you a Man United fan, Chris?
I would have a slight allegiance to them.
I thought that. So that's why I left you to last. That's what they're saying. I mean, from the perspective of a Man United supporter, I mean, it's been a horrible season, really, because it's been one disaster after another. I know I was joking with Alan, and my son Stephen's a Liverpool fan and rang me as well. They were on a high, but to be just torn apart by Liverpool at Old Trafford, I suppose summed up where they're at, really.
Yeah, I actually think the pre-match summed it up and what's gone wrong with Manchester United. One of the boys talked about United having an aura. They almost felt they were invincible and unbeatable under Sir Alex Ferguson. But last Friday, David Moyes in his pre-match press conference came out and said that Liverpool were clearly the pre-match favourites. Now, that was obvious to anybody that had any knowledge of the sport. But can you imagine any time over his almost 30 years in charge of Alex Ferguson had said the opposition, no matter who they were the favourites? You know, I think Moyes was almost sort of admitting defeat. I think, you know, I don't think he will be sacked, but I think, you know, he needs to really, really get the house in order. Now, how he does that without the lure of Champions League football, I mean, he bought himself a bit of time last night, but I heard him talking after the game about, you know, the achievement of leading United into the last 8 in the Champions League. And time gone by, that was a bare minimum. You know, United went into Champions League seasons
expecting to be in the last stages.
Expecting to win the damn thing.
Yeah.
You know, reaching the quarterfinals is not an achievement for Man United. You know, really, it's...
Well, if you lose cup matches to Swansea and Sunderland and you're 7th in the table, it doesn't really count for much if you're in the Champions League quarter-final, and most people feeling that's as far as you'll go.
Yeah, like, I mean, they're going into a draw this week with 7 teams that are clearly a step above them, you know, and their chance of silverware long since gone for the first time in God knows how long, that they have no chance of any trophy at this stage of the season. And it's going to get even more difficult for David Moyes. Like, they play Man City next week, going for a league title, and you just fear, like, even West Ham at the weekend, you know, again, time's gone by, you would have put that down as three points for United, but
not anymore.
As the boys mentioned, they had an aura and they've lost it. And I think away from the pitch and stuff, David Moyes has lost the aura, because he had a chance last week to sort of raise the troops, rally the troops, and he failed miserably.
OK, we're going to have to leave it there, lads. We've run out of time. All the best to St Eunan's and Carrick Colleges in that final on Saturday. Great to see the two Donegal schools competing at that level, and whichever of them go forward, I'm sure will represent the county very, very well. We'll be back with Talking Sport at a later date. All the best.